We kindle this chalice, symbol of unity within diversity, with these words from the door of the Unitarian Church of Dublin, Ireland. We bid you welcome to this house. It's a place we love. It's a place we tend with care. We do not ask what you believe or expect you to think the way that we do, but only that you try to live a kindly, helpful life with the dignity proper to a human being. Preachers here have the task of presenting religion fearlessly and freely and faithfully. Hearers here have the responsibility of testing what they hear, not only with a critical mind, but also in the living of everyday life. The members of this congregation welcome the support of all who believe that religion is wider than any sect, deeper than any set of opinions, and all might find here friendship, strength, and encouragement for their daily living. There is spirituality in the jokester. You will hear from the jokester this morning. You only need one match. All the others just don't matter. Here we go. You only need one match. Yeah, one match will do. One match for me and one match for you. Who you are from first to your last. Remember my friends, you only need one match. That's it, Joey. Young folks who have been patient, I have tried my best to at least keep your attention complete with cone heads. So at this point, we would like to take a few moments to talk to the grown-ups before we share a story. A good story that is well told is mighty hard to resist. We're drawn into that narrative we see in ourselves, even if secondhand. Once removed, a character that looks a good deal like us, or what we'd like to be, or maybe what we don't want to be. That is that Zen-like poo. There is the outcast Jesus. And the next thing we know, we're part of the story. So the good story, well told, puts in safer if inviting terms some truth or some experience, some deep and spiritual longing. The early English and the early Irish, they knew that, especially the Druids and the Celts, they knew that. They knew something about good stories well told. The tale that you're about to hear is a modern retelling of Conla and the Fairy Maiden. It's a fantastical look at heaven as a place free from burdens. And it asks us, do we really want to be free of burdens? And if so, what is heaven? So Conla was one of the many folk tales published in the collection by the Australian-born Jewish author Joseph Jacobs. His dates are 1854 to 1916. Jacobs reveled in fairy tales because they were always filled with a moral and they always had an upbeat ending. And so it is that we share with you our highly adapted, we hope morally uplifting version of Conla and the Fairy Maiden.
Good morning to you. Good morning. Oh, my. I'd like to invite all the children to come down front and sit in the front so they can see me. If y'all can come down. If y'all could sit in the chairs right here, that'd be a big help to me. Conla of the Fiery Hair was son of Con of the 100 Fights. He was fair, kind, and much beloved by his father the king. One day he stood by the stood. He didn't stood, he stood. He stood by the side of his father on the high groom's knot. He saw a maiden clad in strange attire. She danced towards him like the rolling mist coming down off the hills. said, there where there's neither death nor pain, there we keep holiday always, and joy is our constant companion. And in all of our pleasure we have no strife. And because we have our homes in the round green hills, men call us the hill folk. The king and all with him wondered much to hear a voice when they saw no one. For said Connla alone, none saw the fairy maiden. To whom art thou talking, son? said Con the king. Then the maiden answered, Connla speaks, to yon fair maid for whom neither death nor old age awaits. I love Connla, and now I call him away to the plain of pleasure. Moy Ned, where Bodag is king, and where there been no complaint, no sorrow in that land since he's held the kingship. Oh, come with me, Connla of the fiery hair, ruddy as the dawn with thy tawny skin. A fairy crown awaits thee, to grace thy comely face and thy royal form. Come, and never shall thy handsomeness fade, nor thy youth, till the end of time. The king did fear what the maiden said, which he heard though he could not hear. And he called aloud for his druid, Corin by name. O Corin of the many spells, he said, and of the cunning magic, I call upon thy aid. A task that is too great for all my skill and wit, greater than any laid upon me since I seized the kingship. A maiden unseen has met us, and by her power would take from me my dear, comely son. If thou help not, he will be taken from thy king, and lured to the place of eternal sublimity. And what kind of a place is that being for mortals?
This world is not my home, just a passing through. Treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. Angels beckon me from heaven's open door. I cannot feel at home in this world anymore. The brothers and the sisters in the faith who taught me that old hymn were of an evangelical Christian, highly oral, Appalachian, Scots-Irish culture. 4 decades up the road of life, their theological compatriots here in town would likely experience serial coronaries were they to learn that we this morning are comparing the Druid tale to the biblical narratives. But I say that the similarities speak for themselves and to the open mind. The promise of eternal life, the pain-free, at last, existence, a land where we never grow old, a bejeweled crown. Conla's father, the king, called that place eternal sublimity. The fairy maiden called it the plains of the ever-living. The brothers and sisters in the faith, they just called it heaven. Call it what you will, friends, but this no suffering allowed, bling-laden, Dorian gray thing is not a bad way to wind up, at least not in the imagination. And yet, if you heard the story, here's Conla's royal father asking his druid sage, what kind of place is that for mortals? It's been said of us that we're more interested in getting heaven into people than people into heaven. Conla's father sounds like a pretty staunch humanist, 4th century, a pretty staunch humanist. He's pretty much in line with that kind of thinking. Mortals are mortals. His son may well have shared his dad's more practical beliefs, but now comes the archetypal temptress with other ideas. And so the tale, sexist as the ancient myths tend to be, it sets up the tension now between the father and the son and the lovely young woman in between. I suggest to you it's a proxy tug. It's a tug of war between the material world and the heavenly possibility. So let's see what comes next in this 4th century materialist, spiritualist standoff.
Then Corin the Druid stood forth and chanted his spells toward the spot where the maiden's voice had been heard. And none heard her voice again, nor could Conla see her any longer. Only as she vanished, before the Druid's mighty spell, she threw an apple at Conla. For a whole month, and from that day, Conla would take nothing to eat or to drink, save only from that apple. But as he ate it, it grew again, and it always kept whole. And all the while there grew within him a mighty yearning, and a longing after the maiden he had seen, and he began to hear music. And it called to him from far and away, Across the land he came, drifting on the wind, from the plain of pleasure. When the last day of the month for waiting came, Conra stood by the side of the king, his father, on the plain of Arcomin, and again he saw the maiden come dancing towards him. She was, too. Even if she was having wardrobe mishaps. And again she spoke to him. "'Tis a glorious place, forsooth, that Conla holds among short-lived mortals, awaiting the day of death. But now the folk of life, the ever-living ones, beg and bid thee, come to Moy Mel, the plain of pleasure. For thou hast learnt of thy goodness, see thee in thy home among thy dear ones. When Con the king heard the maiden's voice, he called to his men and he said, Summon swift my druid cord, for I see she has again this day the power of speech. Then the maiden said, O mighty Con, fighter of 100 fights, the druid's power cannot keep the promise. Your beloved son will know the place where joy forever dwells, and strife is no more.
In my world, heaven comes in moments, just moments. Heaven comes in moments because we pause to notice. In a sermon on race and class, former president of our denomination, Bill Sinkford, tells us that many a religious liberal thinks that she or he can think his or her way into heaven. He's not talking here about the literal heaven of traditional religions, but about a place in which we're at peace with ourselves, at peace with one another, at peace with the current of life. Call it the Damh, call it God, call it emptiness. Just at peace. The fairy maiden now speaks directly to Con, King, Father, to Conla, telling him that his beloved son will know the place where joy forever dwells, and strife is no more. And Conla responds to spiritual discipline. He fasts. He eats only the apple, think Eden, the apple given to him by the fairy maiden. He has prepared himself for heaven, for moments, not by thinking, but by spiritual discipline, and as she says, goodness to his family. Friends, the old myth and our former president, they remind us that there is a middle ground between the material and the spiritual, a place where reason meets mystery. Many places, actually, and again, we call those places moments. I'm thinking here of what an old camera commercial referred to as the moments of our lives. Anybody recall that? Moments in which all is well. The veil of the mundane is lifted. Connections are made. Loving kindness is all around. I want you to join me in a brief meditation this morning. Under the rubric that heaven comes in the form of moments. And if meditation is not among your spiritual disciplines, that's okay. As I always say when we grow silent like this, take what you need and leave the rest. So if you will, everybody practice what I'm going to ask you to do. You just sit in your chair kind of comfortably, kind of lean back a little bit and feel the fabric, the seat, your place in it. And if you like, would you close your eyes? And just listen to yourself breathe for a few moments. Because that breath is your connection to the very force of life. And as you let your mind chatter, just slow down a bit. Let your mind travel to moments in your life in which all was well, and love was manifest. Start with the most recent. Maybe that moment was about nature, about a friend, a partner, family member. Was it a rank stranger? Hold that moment. And then move back a bit. Was a holy moment the birth of a child? Was it a goal achieved? A baby smile? Shaft of light? And if there are many moments, that's okay. Just notice what's going on. Do you hear laughter? Somebody crying? Just hold that moment a little longer. Now I want you to let your mind go backwards as though you were tumbling through the pages of a precious scrapbook. And that scrapbook are the many such moments that you've been gifted. All those times when love came down. Maybe you're by the ocean, in the mountains. Maybe you see the sky. Maybe you saw the smiling faces of those who are no longer with you in body, but forever with you in spirit. Maybe you see places that you've lived and you've loved. Silly moments. Grace-filled moments. Heavenly moments. Now turn to the page in your book that has, even for now, your very favorite moment. The time when heaven came down and glory filled your soul. And just hold that moment. Offer thanks that so holy a time was yours to keep forever. Before you close that book, remind yourself that there are more holy moments yet to come. That you are called by the Spirit of life within and without to seek out, to share more sacred moments. Slowly come back to us now. Open your eyes. Be present for this people, for this spirit, and this time.
Then Conn the king observed that since the maiden came, Conn his son spoke to none that spoke to him. So Conn of the 100 Fights said to him, "Is it to thy mind what the woman says, my son? Will you truly believe in us?" "It is hard upon me," said Conn. "I love my own folk above all else. But yet a longing seizes me for the maiden and her lands." When the maiden heard this, she answered and said, "The ocean is not so strong as the waves of thy longing. Come with me, my boy, the gleaming, straight gliding crystal canoe. Soon we can reach Bodag's realm. I see the bright sun sink, yet far as it is, we can reach it before dark. And if this be not enough to tempt you, there is to another land worthy of thy journey, a land joyous to all that seek it. Only wives and maidens dwell there. If thou wilt, we can seek it and live there together."
As I always say when we grow silent like that,
When the maiden ceased to speak, Conn of the fiery hair rushed away from them and sprang into the corral, the gleaming, straight, gliding crystal canoe. And then they all, king and court, saw it glide away over the bright sea toward the setting sun. Away and away, till the eye could see it no longer. And Connla and the fairy maiden went their way on the sea, and were no more seen, nor did any know where they went.
some black morning, when this life is over, I'll fly away to home, God's celestial shore. I will fly away. Get in now. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away in the morning. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll story ends as Conway and the fairy maiden fade away, fly away. They paddle their gleaming canoe into the setting sun, and he bids farewell to the familiar, and he casts his faith with the promise of eternal bliss. Common for all his deliberation, all his trepidation, he chooses immortality. Spartanburg friends for the past 20-something years, I've been sending folks' ashes and bodies off to mountain winds, coastal shorelines, patches of earth, and yes, not a few old mantles. I've given eulogies for more than 100 souls, and yet, in all honesty, I cannot say for certain what, if anything, awaited them. Some believe their spirits would survive their bodies. Most did not, and a few could go either way. Conway's tale reminds me that so many of our folks found it more important to see and discern, to be humble before mystery, than they ever did certainty, to be certain. Conway's tale sounds differently to us in our modern ears, and yet those are the people who I think about as I read this story. Science and reason have not been kind to the story's literal application. Although, who can say that modern physics and research on near-death experiences may one day reverse all that? But the ancients, they didn't tell their stories in order to prove or disprove immortality. That was never the point. It was their vow to mystery. In this case, their vow to ultimate mystery. And thus all those juicy sidebars, the fairy that is seen only by the mystic, the apple that echoes that of Eden, the sensual theme of a handsome prince and a beautiful fairy who will never lose their youth, the court magician that could not, try as he will, dispel Conda's sore temptation with the other world. And in the end, the fairy maiden's urgent plea to make haste before the sun goes down, or you might say before Conda changes his mind. We who have brought this story to you in this season of Irish magic, we have no more interest than the ancients in proving or disproving life immortal. Nor was the point to simply entertain you. The point was to invite you to tap your imagination and step back and see what happens. The point was to teach our children that story can be a lifelong teacher. And speaking for myself now, the point was to find in St. Patrick's Day an old take from the very people he tried to convert. And that's what he did to the folks that gave us the story. So our thanks for your patience, you who despise such tales. Our encouragement to those who are at least interested in old stories for a new day. And our blessing on those for whom stories like this are your lens to the world, and they are the stuff of your spirit. And I want to close in with a quick story that's going to touch, I think, on all three groups, the mystics, the rationalists, and of course, you political pundits. A man suffered from several ailments, and although he bravely fought each and every one, he eventually died with only his sister, a nun, by his side. To his great surprise, he woke up and he was in heaven, but there was some bad news to go with the good. He was still in his hospital bed, and he was still fighting for his life. So under the care of kind doctors and nurses, heaven's best, he began a slow but steady recovery. And it became clear that he would indeed live. A hospital administrator, a nun, came by to visit him. She told him that money was tight in heaven as on earth, so she needed to know how he planned to pay for his treatment. No health insurance, came the raspy reply. The sister then asked if perhaps he had some money in the bank. No money was all they could squeak out. Moving down her checklist, do you have a relative who could help you? Just one. A spinster sister. She's a nun. Sister stood and firmly spoke in a loud voice. Sir, I realize you've been very ill, but I'll have you know that nuns are not spinsters. Nuns are married to God. I understand, whispered the man. But your tone makes me wonder if you consider me your brother. Sister was surprised at such a question, so she became calm again. "Oh, yes. Yes, of course you're my brother." And he asked, "Should I consider you my sister?" "Yes," she replied. "When I promised myself to God, I took an oath to become sister to all." The fellow then asked the nun to come a little closer that he might whisper into her ear, "Swell, sister, and send the bill to my brother-in-law." Happy St. Patrick's Day.